Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
If you're a non-farmer, you may be driving around the country in the fall and you see how some farmers are leaving all their plant residue, all their stalks and leaves and everything out in the field to break down, and other farmers are baling them up. Why do some farmers bale them as opposed to other farmers leaving them? What are the advantages and disadvantages?
Well, certainly the biggest reason why farmers are baling up stalks is to use it as part of their feed source for cattle. And when you look around many of the feedlots, they'll actually take those bales of stalks and pile them up and use them as a windbreak in the winter around the cattle. So they're kind of getting a dual purpose there, using it for feed, but also using it as a windbreak. Now, for farmers that are leaving it in the field, they figured out, hey, there's so many nutrients in these stalks. I don't want just the cattle to get it.
Yep.
I want to leave them out in my field.
Yeah,
so there's a couple different ways to look at it.
Yeah, but that's no big deal if you're putting the manure back into the field. Then basically it's fine. There's no problem with that. It's just you want to make sure you're replacing those nutrients that you've removed, because like Darren said, there are nutrients in the stalks. And when you take those off the field, you could potentially hurt next year's crop. But there is one way that you could possibly help next year's crop too. In certain situations, farmers have so much residue out there, it's hard for them to plant the next crop and get that seed to have good seed to soil contact and get a nice stand. So by taking some of the stalks off the field, they kind of thin things out a little bit, and now they can get the seeds in better. They get a little nicer stand.
Well, there's certainly been a lot of discussion over the last decade about, wow, we've got this residue out in the field that could be used to make fuel. And we're talking about cellulosic ethanol production. And so there are a few plants around the country now. Some are just in a real small stage, but others, like Poet's Project Liberty, are up with large quantities of residue, and they're actually taking that residue that has some value in the field, but not a huge value, and they're buying it from farmers and using it to make fuel, which has even more value.
Well, that's one way you can look at the whole thing. Here's the way I look at it. Most ethanol plants around the country are using corn. And a lot of people say, oh, it's taking away our food. Well, you know what? You as a human being don't eat yellow corn, number 2 yellow corn. Okay, so what happens is when they bring this number 2 yellow corn in, it's normally stuff that is fed to livestock. But did you know that when they're processing the ethanol from the corn, they're taking none of the nutrient value out. They're taking the starch out. And actually, as a farmer then, you can take the distiller's grain, they'll call it, what's left after the process, you can mix that with some of these corn stalks, and now you're right back to the same nutritional value you had with the corn that went in the plant in the first place. So you didn't lose anything.
And like you say, Brian, if you take the manure from the livestock and bring that back out in the field and put that back out as plant food for the next crop, you really have gone full circle. You've gotten so many uses out of that cornfield. It's been fantastic, both for the environment, for our economy, and for the livestock too.
Yep, so did you mention livestock twice there, Darren? The livestock are really important. We want to make sure that the livestock are fed well. But once again, the reason why some farmers choose to bale up their stalks, it has to do with their livestock, whether it's for food or bedding or possibly even a windbreak.
One thing you don't want to leave in your field as a windbreak is our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?